Speciation by KayScience.com. What I'm drawing here is a very large island surrounded by water. On one side of the island, you'll find very tall trees with larger fruit. On the other side of the island, there are bushes that are closer to the ground with nut-type fruit in the bushes. So on the island, you've got a population of the same species of bird with very similar sized beaks, same sized wings, and the same sized legs. This is because they're free to roam around the island. So you've got one population of birds on the island that are adapted to eating both the fruit on the tall trees and also the fruit on the small bushes. Over the course of many years, a physical barrier forms in the form of a river. So a physical barrier can be a very large river that separates the two sides of the island. Another example of a physical barrier can be a mountain range forming over many millions of years. So what we've got here are two examples of physical barriers that can separate one population of a species into two separate isolated populations. So you've now got population A on the left and population B on the right. So population B is now isolated from population A by a physical barrier. And you've got population A, which is also isolated, also by the physical barrier. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. So within a population of a species, there's going to be variation. So some birds will have larger beaks, some birds will have smaller beaks, some birds will have smaller wings, and some birds will have larger wings. The main food source for population B is large fruit high up in the trees. So the beneficial variation is going to be a large beak. That's to hold the large fruit. A large beak. That's to hold the large fruit. Also, you'd want larger wings. This is so you can fly up to the large fruit high up more easily. This is so you can fly up to the large fruit high up more easily. So the birds without larger beaks or larger wings are going to die. So you can see here, these birds with smaller wings or smaller beaks are going to struggle to feed as easily, so they die out. Birds that show the beneficial variation in population B, which is the larger beaks and the larger wings, are going to be able to feed more easily on the larger fruit higher up because they've got a larger beak and larger wings. So these birds will survive, reproduce, and pass on their beneficial variation to their offspring. This is natural selection. The main food source for population A are small nuts low down. So they're going to need a sharp beak. This bird has a sharp beak, but this bird does not have a sharp beak. So the birds without the sharp beaks who are used to eating maybe the larger fruit before, they're going to die. So the birds with sharp beaks are going to be able to feed, survive, and then mate and reproduce and pass on their beneficial variation to their offspring. So the main food source is at ground level, so they don't need to fly anymore. So flying isn't essential for this bird. So having smaller wings isn't a disadvantage. What the bird will need is sharper beaks, but also stronger legs so they can move faster, so they can run faster at the ground level. So because population A is now isolated and their only food source has a small nut at ground level, these birds have now adapted to have a smaller, sharper beak without wings because they don't need to fly anymore, but they're going to have stronger, faster legs so they can run quicker, so they can escape predators at ground level when they're feeding. So population A, over many rounds of natural selection, are going to have evolved into a different species with faster, more muscular legs, smaller wings, and a sharper beak. Whereas population B, which was isolated and only had larger fruit high up, they're going to have larger wings and larger beaks. So they will have evolved to be a bird with larger wings that can fly better and larger beaks so they can eat the larger fruit. So population A will have evolved into a different species. So species A will have evolved into species C, and species B will have evolved into species D. This is speciation. Species C and species D are now different species. This is speciation. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. Press pause to practice using those key words. The answers will follow. Press pause to go through your answers and make any corrections to your mistakes.